Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another LinkedIn Live event with Beyond Clean. I am thrilled that you're joining us through either LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. We had a false start a couple minutes ago, so we're 5 minutes after the start time, but we're ready to rock. I am so excited that you're tuned into this conversation today. This event today is titled Wrapping the Proper Way, Sorting Through Shortages. I'm already tongue-tied. It's going to be a great discussion. Wrapping the proper way, sorting through shortages and sourcing alternative solutions. And that's exactly what we'll be doing today. If any of you have been on LinkedIn or on Facebook over the last year, you've likely seen comments and conversations and probably even some arguments about the shortage in blue wrap, kind of some finger pointing. He said, she said, whatever it may be. And likely some MacGyver techniques for the best ways to navigate these issues. Well, we're going to clear a lot of that up today and give some real anecdotes and some solutions to issues that healthcare facilities are experiencing. If there's one thing that you can count on in healthcare, it's that change is inevitable. And with things like the advancement of technology, the competitiveness in the medical device industry, and the need and demand for products that's ever evolving for healthcare facilities, including, and most notable to this discussion, a demand for a product that is increasingly difficult to source because of a global pandemic. Healthcare facilities are bound to go through changes in supply use and changes in ordering. Now, if you've spent much time working in healthcare, I'm sure you've gone through some changes in supplies like gloves and sterilization wrap and indicators and disinfectants and things like that. Ask any healthcare leader, and I'm excited to do that today, and they can tell you that managing change is probably one of the most difficult parts of their job. I am thrilled to be hosting this discussion with two dynamic sterile processing professionals. Jamie Tarrant is Vice President of Marketing and Education for Proper Manufacturing, and Dee Kilby is Manager of Clinical Operations, Endoscopy, and Sterile Processing at Providence Medford Medical Center. Both of these individuals have unique perspectives about the blue wrap shortage, and in particular, I'm excited to just really get into it today. So I am going to welcome them both to the virtual stage. Jamie and Dee, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, this is take two, and so I'm excited we're making it work this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the things that I would love to do to just kick off this discussion, I'm really interested in your unique perspectives today because you both really represent critical sides of the equation when we talk about patient safety. Jamie, you're a manufacturer that supplies important products for healthcare facilities, and Dee, you lead a department that relies on these types of products. If you were both to summarize, and we'll take turns on this, if you were both to summarize what the last year has been like using the keywords blue wrap, how would you summarize the last year? And if you could give a brief introduction of yourselves to begin, that would be awesome. Dee, we'll start with you.
Okay, so my name is Dee Kilby, and I'm the manager of the sterile processing department here at Providence Medford Medical Center. I am I don't know if I would say that I'm an expert, but I definitely have a lot of experience, about 24 years of healthcare experience, all within the OR and SPD setting. I'm a surgical technologist. I am an RN, and I ran a surge tech program and a sterile processing program for about 8 years. I've worked at a large university hospital. I've worked at small community hospitals. So I have definitely seen a lot of differences in the way supply chain is managed. As far as the blue wrap goes for this year, blue wrap has been a challenge, to say the least. Supplying it, when we get back stock, trying to make sure that it is adequate for what we need to use it for. And then determining the prioritization when we are out of certain types of wrap, certain sizes. So that's probably the best word that I can use, is that it has been challenging.
That is a very fitting word, and I think that theme will traverse the entire conversation. Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you, but before I do so, I want to say hello to Lola. She's tuning in and says, Dee, you're a superstar. Great to see you live. And Dorothy, thanks for tuning in as well. Feel free to leave some comments. I'd love to see where you all are tuning in from. And if you don't mind leaving, just what has been the biggest challenge for you in your facility regarding Blue Wrap? Jamie, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, like Lindsay said, I've worked for a proper manufacturing company in education and marketing for 5 years now. Over my time here, I have been really committed to understanding and supporting the needs of sterile processing technicians as they come up. We're a smaller family-owned company that's been around since the 1930s, and so we really pride ourselves on our ability to adapt, which I think Lindsay has said it best. The theme of the year is pivoting. So in general, that's something that we've had to do a lot as a manufacturer, to adapt and pivot to the needs of our customers. On the flip side, when it comes to Blue Wrap, in some ways for us, it's been a very exciting year. This is something we've been working on for a long time, getting SMS material wrap available to our customers. For many, many years, we've offered a cellulose-based product, which I think we'll get into the differences down the road. But so for us, it's been, of course, an incredibly challenging year on the global picture, but we're so excited that something we were working on, frankly, is making such a meaningful impact now.
Wonderful. And Dee, I saw you chuckle when Jamie said that it's been in some ways an exciting year for their organization related to SMS Wrap. And we'll get into the beauty of this discussion is we have both really critical perspectives on both sides of the coin. And so on one hand, we have DU representing a group of sterile processing leaders who are seeking solutions for challenges and issues. And Jamie, your perspective is you're providing those solutions, and that's awesome. That's so awesome. So I really want to get into it today. Marilyn, thanks for joining us today. Hank, thanks for tuning in from Beyond Clean headquarters. We appreciate it. Dee, I'm gonna send this first question over to you. Okay. Let's discuss this idea that hospitals can find themselves in a situation where a product that they rely on can automatically go poof and be either back ordered or discontinued. Can you talk a little bit about what process as a department leader you go through when you get that notice that, hey, guess what, we can't get this product for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's always a fun day when we get that notification that says, hey, we can't get your Blue Wrap anymore. In particular, this year, we dealt with that with our largest size of Blue Wrap. And we use that particular size wrap on our robotic scopes. We use it on many of our vendor trays that come in for our ortho procedures and our spine procedures that we do here. And it's kind of like stops you dead in your tracks. Like, okay, what are we gonna do? And how can we manage this situation? So one of the things that I have done is really to rely on my staff and have them help troubleshoot the whatever that issue may be. Figure out what else can we do to help us get through a shortage or an elimination of a particular product. My staff, I always feel like, and I tell them all the time, you guys are the experts in your field. You are certified. You know exactly what is going on. You know the standards just as well as I do. So let's put our heads together and work together as a team. So I always recommend that. But it is a little nerve-wracking when they look at you and they say, well, what are we going to do now? So at times we have been faced with a product that has just completely disappeared. And at the particular hospitals, every place runs a little bit differently. This particular hospital is part of a much larger health system. And because we're part of a much larger health system, it's actually our system office that is looking at the products that are available for all of the hospitals underneath either the particular region or state. My hospital, or my health system covers hospitals in Oregon, in Texas, California, Montana, and Washington. So that regional spread also plays into what kind of products that we can and cannot get, and how close are they, and things of that nature. So we always have to keep that in consideration. But when we have items that change just out of the blue, like, okay, now you're going to be getting this particular kind of gown to use in your decontam department. Well, it may not be something that we've ever used. And when we go to having our staff learn how to use those, that it's different. When we go with our blue wrap challenges, so it's figuring out how not to waste. That is probably one of our biggest challenges that we have. We have a lot of instrumentation that goes in and out of the department. We have instruments that come in that are whole. So we have to sterilize them. We still have to wrap them and have them available, but then they leave the department because we didn't use them, and that wrap has now been wasted. One of the things that we did was, or that I implemented here locally, was to really challenge our reps for the instruments on which particular sets are we really truly going to use. What do we absolutely need to have for a backup? And so they had to actually say, I'm going to use this. We're going to use this. Definitely sterilize it. We can actually wait on, because he never uses it, but I always bring it in. And that kind of communication back and forth with the vendors is incredibly important. So, but getting substitute wraps is also another big challenge. We don't have any say over it, and all of a sudden we get another wrap that is the same size, but it won't hold the same tray weight. So then we have to re-educate the staff to, okay, well, we cannot do these types of trays with this wrap. You only use it for these. And that has been a challenge and frustrating for the staff. As end users, they just want to be able to do their job, pick up the wrap, do what they're supposed to do, and stopping and having to think, okay, wait, did I pull that out of this pile, or did I pull it out of this pile? It gets confusing.
I can't help but ask a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for providing that that firsthand account of the challenges that you've been through and have had to lead through over the past year. My first question is related to your comment about figuring out where the most wasteful scenarios are. And I can't help but wonder, have you figured out, or have you come across wasteful scenarios that you're like, wow, this actually seems like a great opportunity to limit waste in the long term, even when there's not a wrap shortage? Like, did it actually bring about some process improvements that will make sense for the long haul?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, and thank you for asking that. It actually has, by really taking that step back, because we have so many vendors that bring instrumentation here. We do a lot of orthopedics, and we do a lot of ortho spine cases at this particular facility. And because of that, we have trays that are coming in and out all the time. This actually, I don't want to say forced, but it really engaged our reps to talk to our staff to determine, okay, which ones do we really need to put up? What can we hold off on? And when we don't have, things aren't going to make the tray weight because the wrap will only hold up to so many pounds. How do we separate out those trays to make sure that we are providing sterilization to those instruments without any shortcuts or, crossing any lines? But we have seen a decrease in the amount of wrap that we are using. We've also seen now some of our vendors are looking at switching over to having Genesis cases for hard sterilization pans for their instruments that they're bringing in, instead of relying on the departments to supply blue wrap for all of their instruments. So that definitely is a step in the right direction.
Okay, great. And then my other question related to your initial comments is related to training. You said that was one of the more difficult parts, is making sure to actively communicate with your staff the specifics and the IFU details of all of the different wrap material that comes into your department. How many times would you say you've had to retrain on wrap material alone over the last year?
Oh, many. Our department here works 24/5. So we have all 3 shifts 5 days a week, and then call on the weekends. So making sure that we are hitting our on-call or per diem employees, and also communicating with the night shift that maybe doesn't see the management often, has been really, really important to make sure that happens, because that will cause a lot of rework. There was a wrap change that we went through that the tray weights were different, and it was noticed the next morning that overnight they had been wrapped in the trays were wrapped in wrap that wasn't allowed for that. So the pan was too heavy for it. But it's the right size. It was the right size wrap, but the pan was too heavy for it because the material wasn't the same. So that caused rework. So we had to rewrap those with the correct wraps that would provide the sterilization for those pans. And that also is wasteful, because you can't use that wrap again. You can't, that's not possible. So, and there's only so many places that actually recycle blue wrap, so it gets thrown away.
Yeah.
So the one thing I just wanted to sort of jump in about is that it's so great to hear your perspective, Dee, on knowing the product before it's in use. That's something that in education for a smaller company, without necessarily having on the floor reps in every single facility, really see as a major hurdle to a lot of departments. So Lindsay started talking about, this whole talk about how we've seen so much chatter and conversation and at times maybe debating in these social media groups about how products work. And I love that you're highlighting the individuality of each company's product, and that it can be variable, and knowing that information to start with is absolutely essential. I mentioned the difference between a cellulose-based wrap and an SMS-based wrap, where the vast majority of the time a cellulose-based wrap is going to be single sheets that you need to use 2 of for simultaneous wrapping. And that's something that I've seen so many people struggling with and so much frustration about in the field, where they're posting it, and even in our case, calling us and saying, hey, your wrap doesn't work. My one sheet tore. And frankly, for us, we're in a sort of awkward spot where, yeah, of course your one sheet tore. It's supposed to be used with 2 sheets. And it's not an inferior product. It's just a different type of product. And so I love that you're highlighting the individuality of products. And also, as a manufacturer, it's giving us a lot of opportunity to learn what we need to focus on and what is important to you as an end user, and to try to find ways to overcome maybe disruptions in communication that may happen because of the manufacturer, distributor, end user relationship. So sometimes, we always provide a full technical bulletin and all information beyond your wildest dreams to the distributors to get it listed with them. But what I've learned in conversations with UD and many other people is that information doesn't reach the end user. And so it helps me to better understand our industry and to better provide information in knowing that what matters most to our users.
Mm-hmm. I want to do a quick shout out to Kim in Glendale, California, and Chris in Gastonia, North Carolina. Thank you both for joining us. Lola's tuning in from Alaska.
Wow.
Manusha, thank you. Jessica, thanks for joining us. Pablo in Costa Rica, appreciate you tuning in. We did get an interesting comment that actually is a great segue. And David, you didn't know that you were positioning this perfectly, but this comment says there are so many blue wrap manufacturers and importers, so buy from the quote unquote field and use the supply part of our training to align with materials management. But Dee, I want to position something to you, because one of the primary reasons organizations change products is one of the primary reasons is to stay compliant with their GPOs, or their group purchasing organizations. Mm-hmm. And obviously things like success with a particular brand comes into play, finding the best price without compromising quality comes into play. But when you're dealing with contracts, since you work for, within a larger health system, you mentioned before, you alluded to the fact that one product might work well for a bigger hospital and may not work as well for a smaller hospital in that same system. So can you describe a little bit more about the challenges that you see kind of navigating this type of, when you're given the option of, well, there's a lot of manufacturers, just go out and source it, versus we're working within the confines of a very specific GPO or health system?
Right. So, because the facility that I am working for now, Providence is a very large health system. Our contracts are, like I said earlier, they're set up by the system office. We do get communication. These products are changing. This product is changing. And some of it, for me anyway, ends up being like white noise, because it's constant. These things, the products are changing out constantly. This vendor gets this contract. This vendor gets this contract. Wait 6 months. Oh, wait, that vendor's no longer on contract. Now this one. And so when it comes to our supplies, we have basically one distributor that we have to go through. And not saying anything bad about distributors, but there seems to be a disconnect between information that we're getting from the distributor and what the manufacturers are actually providing to the distributors. There's the trickle down of that doesn't seem to happen easily. And so let's say I wanted to contact Jamie to ask her a question. Well, I could do that, but it's really probably not going to help me in lobbying for one thing or another, because bigger picture, we go with this distributor that goes with this manufacturer, and that's going to save the system as a whole a lot of money. So that's just one of the things within a larger health system. We don't really have much end user say. It's kind of like, oh, this is what they've changed to. This is what the distributor is now providing. And that's what you have. I was part of a university setting, and at that university setting, anytime something was a particular distributor had something going on back order, we actually had individuals within our CS department that their job was to look for what are the other alternatives that are out there, and how can we get these other alternatives in the hands of the end users to determine which one is what we're going to use for when we have a back order. That's something that I found when I was there that was very beneficial, because we had people that understood, and they met these people met with the end users to talk about how these products are different and what is what's changing. And if there is more than one alternative, they're bringing them all to the table to say, okay, which one is it that we want to use? And also, when things go poof, these guys know that things are going poof. They have that information ahead of time that this is going to go away, and I'm sorry, but we have to change. So now we have to choose something different, and gives us a chance to trial the other options before we have to pick one, instead of just having it here. It's this one. It's the only one out there.
Sure. And Jamie, from your perspective, can you explain a little bit more about the relationship between a manufacturer, because you're coming from the manufacturer's perspective? What is the relationship between a manufacturer and a distributor, especially as it relates to product substitutions? And Dee, you alluded to this and explained the perspective of the sterile processing leader and how you navigate that. But Jamie, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so first I want to start by saying it's so interesting to hear Dee saying that her contracts can change at a moment's notice, because as a manufacturer, we are on strict cycles. So many of our contracts with GPOs or IDNs, which are very similar, are 3-year increments. And we are notified about receiving a contract a few months before the contract is put in place so that we can start to get this information to the field. Now, I completely agree that our experience is that much of the time, the departments that are using these products have very little say, and at times are very disappointed and frustrated that whatever their preferred product that they had before is now gone. And I also want to highlight the fact that when I am speaking about products, it's always about the disposables used in sterile processing. It can be very, very different when we think of our vendors for spinal implants or other types of major instruments. So I just want to clarify that it is an extremely different process. I've worked in that space. It's entirely different. So when I'm speaking today, it's all about providing those disposables, indicators, integrators, wrap, etc., to the departments. So it's really interesting to hear when there are changes in contracts that happen quickly. Our relationships are basically with the GPOs and IDNs. We provide extensive information to them. We provide whatever they request. We are beholden to those contracts. Those contracts are essential to us existing, and hope to offer pricing and services that can make a difference for the departments. After we've been granted that contract is when we have a real opportunity to go in and have conversations with the departments to show the product and to help them understand why they may want to switch to our products, which of course we all buy things. I can't imagine what it would be like if I was told, okay, you can buy one, you have to buy this thing, and then afterwards we'll tell you how it works. So that's something that we're constantly facing that is frustrating, and we completely relate to that. In terms of the relationship with distribution, in some ways it's very similar. It's a symbiotic relationship. The distributors are essentially the target of our daily lives. So they're providing product on a shelf that's very accessible so that you don't, or Amazon even, so that you don't have to go to 5 different stores to buy the same item. You can buy all of those items in one place. And so we have relationships with all of the major distributors, as everybody does, right? The vast majority of products in the world that we want are on Amazon. Same thing goes for manufacturers in the medical space, especially with disposables. We build relationships with the Cardinal, McKesson's, et cetera, with no preference. Our customers, they're the ones with a preference. We do not exclude or include anyone for any reason other than customer inclusion. And we actually provide all of our information to the distributor. That includes when a product is being discontinued or changed or replaced in some way. So perhaps there was a shift in availability of a certain size of something. They get those notifications. things that we do, and I imagine most manufacturers do as well, is try to put slips into shipping boxes so that hopefully that information gets to the end user as well and isn't just loaded into a Cardinal website, right? Oh, this thing's being discontinued in 6 months. Hopefully someone will find it. And by no means am I picking on Cardinal, right? Like, that's just the first name that came to mind. But so we're providing that information to the distributors who are providing the information to the end users. The biggest thing, if you take away one thing from this presentation in regards to relationship between manufacturers, distributors, GPOs, and end users, is that those relationships are not competitive at all. I want you to buy from the person that's easiest for you to buy from. I don't have any meaningful, and not me as an individual, me as a company. We don't have a good incentive to make you buy from us directly. So if you have questions about products, you can always go direct to that manufacturer to get the information, because the distributors have thousands of products they're supplying to you from all different brands. It's natural that they don't have the details on everything handy or off the top of their mind. So never feel as though if you're looking for detailed information that you have to go through a distributor, or that for some reason, if you don't know your manufacturer directly, or you don't have a rep from that manufacturer, that you can't go directly to the manufacturer to get the information. And I think at some point, we're going to have a little scrolly across the bottom of the screen that gives the customer service email address for Proper. So if you happen to be someone who is sitting with Proper products on your desk, or hopefully you want to learn more after this conversation, do not hesitate to reach out to the customer service email inbox. Someone will answer you, usually I would say no later than 48 hours, and get you the information you need.
Awesome. And Jamie, this is a great segue into the next part of this conversation. We've heard, and the Beyond Clean team has been a part of a lot of conversations about redistribution of blue wrap materials to fill PPE supply needs, not causing massive supply issues. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of your product specifically, and more specifically the material of it. So can you provide everyone who's tuning in a little background about what exactly this acronym SMS means? So what is SMS
Sure.
and what prompted or what exacerbated the global shortage?
Sure. So SMS is a material. It stands for spun bound and melt blown materials. This is not, we could talk all day about the nitty gritty of what that material is. I think in our industry, it represents a bonded sheet. So that means that SMS wrap is 2 sheets that have been affixed together, so that you don't have to grab 2 sheets to wrap your item, which was the historically recommended way, right? So if we quickly think about the flow of wrapping materials, way back when, and people who've been in the industry for a long time may remember that there was a Amy 16 towel wrap reusable method. Then we moved over to a cellulose-based wrap, which is a single sheet that you need to use 2 of to simultaneously wrap your items. And the key to mention here is that it's never actually one sheet. It's just a simplification of the product, right? It's your 1-ply versus 2-ply toilet paper. So SMS wrap is your 2-ply top marker for wrap. You need to grab one physical sheet. It feels like one sheet, but it's much thicker product, as I think we've all learned as you've been given cellulose-based products and replacement for SMS over the year, right? And so at the end of the day, that's what the product is. It's a 2-ply variety of wraps, so you only have to do the wrapping one time. All the products that are available as disposables in a sterile processing world, and all the products are heavily regulated. They go through FDA approvals. Many are ISO regulated. ISO is an organization that dictates how you can manufacture a certain product to give it a certain name. So in the case of our indicators, you cannot call something a type 4 chemical indicator if it doesn't meet the ISO standard, which is 11140 for that. So one thing that I always like to point out, and it's just a very practical thing to understand for the end users, especially newer end users, is that when we're providing you a product that is the same, there are certain aspects that are truly the same, that have to work in the same way. Now, there's other things that are variable just by the nature of materials, like Dee was talking about. Certain products have only been tested for a certain amount of shelf life. It's not to say that they couldn't go beyond that shelf life, but perhaps for whatever reason right now, that testing is not available. And those little details are exactly what I mean when I say to ask the questions up front, because every product does have a little bit of individuality built into it, depending on the manufacturer. So how do we end up in a quote unquote
All right, I was just getting into it, and remember that code word poof? There she goes. We're gonna get.
She went poof.
She went poof, just like the blue wrap. Well, crap, she's coming back in. Here we go.
No idea what just happened. Poof.
Welcome
There you
back.
go. Talk about poofing. That was so weird. I just disappeared. Okay. How do we end up in a quote unquote shortage? First, and again, I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record, but I can only speak for what our experience is in getting materials and the general experience that we have all had over the past year. I can't answer for a given company as to what has happened for them. The first thing I will say is that, like you mentioned, there has been a lot of diverting of attention of energy in manufacturing to accommodate the arguably more urgent needs, which we know blue wrap is an incredibly urgent need, so it's a very complicated statement to say, which I think has been some of the reason there have been limitations on these wrap products. Again, I can't speak for decisions made at other companies, but I think that's something that we've seen across the board, that attention has been reallocated due to the pandemic. We've also seen extensive shipping issues. I mean, we all watched a boat get stuck in a canal for days, right, that we couldn't receive our items. Shipping, even local shipping with trucks, have been diverted due to the need to disseminate the vaccine. So there's a lot of reasons why things happen. I think the probably the question that is on people's minds is, if all that's happening, how can someone else have wrap at the same time? For us, like I said, in some ways this year in regards to wrap has been great because it's something we've been working on for a long time. And as a manufacturer, it's important to recognize that what manufacturing means, bringing together components to create a final product. So all different manufacturers have different suppliers of different materials, and they may be all a little bit different, bringing that individuality to the product. And what that source is could be very different. So a lot of the products that were brought in that were, I mean, I think we can all say truly not comparable to what once was had in the SMS space, some of those cellulose products from foreign countries, etc. That's a totally different material and a totally different supplier than was originally being used because the quality is tremendously different. We are approaching this launch now from the perspective of planning for a long time for it, but also with what I'll call a lot of diligence. So it's very tempting to kind of come out here and say, wrap for everyone, right? Like that's what I would love. I would love to say we have wrap in every size, in every need, like come on down, Proper is here for you. And of course, to a point that is true. But we also want to be very deliberate and realistic about it. So we don't want to come gouge the market on pricing. The pricing that you'll see if you reach out to Proper is going to be comparable or hopefully better than what you have right now. The sizing that we're offering is in that mid-range from the get-go. So we focus on the 24 to 48 and 54-inch sizing because that's what we understood as the customers to be the most important. Our weights are in the 60 grams per square, excuse me, talk about being tongue-tied, grams per square meter space. So we really are trying to be targeted and provide that middle ground, to fulfill that middle ground right now without over promising. And that's where some of what I think has been really hard, and I imagine will be really hard for our competitors, where frankly, there were a very small number of providers of this product before. They had an excellent and quite impressive ability to supply nearly everyone. So any small change they may have experienced in their ability to get components or materials could have a much bigger impact than a company that's starting to introduce product and is able to kind of pace themselves, like we are at least hoping to do as we enter this space.
Now, as we have the conversation about, this new product that's entering the ring, one of the things that it begs the question, and Dee, maybe you can give your account of this. Many hospitals considered converting to rigid containers during this time. And I know you spoke to the fact that you're having your vendor trays be brought in rigid pans, instead of having your vendors rely on you for blue wrap. But a lot of hospitals did decide to stay the course with blue wrap. Dee, can you talk a little bit about that decision and all that it entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big thing to remember is that there are a lot of components that play into how we sterilize our instrument sets. The weight of the instruments, the metal mass of the instruments, all of those things are taken into consideration. Our trays cannot weigh over 25 pounds. Everybody in this industry knows that. No instrument pan, and that's including the outside rigid container. So, but honestly, when we started looking to find other containers so that we had those, so that we could containerize items that were coming in that we couldn't wrap, they weren't available. There was a shortage of lids for the containers. So the manufacturing really got hit by COVID, because they had to reduce the number of staff that they have on the manufacturing floor to accommodate social distancing. And so that directly affects how fast they can produce instruments and produce the rigid containers. So it just wasn't something that we could, it wasn't even an option, because, we can give you the container, but we can't give you the lid. The lids are on back order for, 2 or 3 months.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
One thing I would add to that is just a reality of everything we do. We all anticipate having a certain workflow, and there's a lot of effort. Fortunately, this is something my colleagues work on and not I, but into preparing for the next year, at the end of the year, for the year to come. And so in some ways, you have so many machines that can produce so many of a certain item, and then all of a sudden there's this sort of somersaulting situation where, okay, product A is not available, people want product B, and you just physically cannot make more of that product, even if you could cram your warehouse full of people. And it's something that is interesting because it's had a major impact now, but also the people who are doing that planning in the future are trying to understand how to anticipate further changes. Is this going to be, we ask ourselves this all the time, are we going to see a change in a year from now to rigid containers because people are going to still have that pain memory and then they'll be available? Or are people truly more comfortable with a wrap type product? And there's so many different ways that it can do, and how to anticipate without over manufacturing or making product that's ultimately unnecessary is something that we think about a lot as manufacturers.
Just a quick welcome to Anthony out in Philly. Thanks for joining us, Anthony. And Shema Siona in Dublin, Ireland. Thanks for tuning in. David in Oregon. We're so excited that you're all here. The three of us span the United States. I'm smack dab in the middle in Minneapolis. Jamie, you're on the East Coast. Dee, you're on the West Coast. So we feel like one big happy family over here spanning the U.S. So this is great. Jamie, I know you made reference to this, but I just want to draw attention once more to the idea that an industry is experiencing a wrap shortage. How can another brand just come in and say, oh, guess what? We're making one out of similar material, even though there's a shortage. How is that possible?
How is it possible? I think the tough answer to that is, again, it goes back to component supply. So where are you getting your materials from, and where are you directing your energies? So we have been working on this for a long time, hoping to get this product out. Stereo Wrap Unite is what we're calling it. That was where we had already intended to put energy. And that's why I can say, we've been very, very fortunate that this is all aligning. Where other companies may have other priorities. And it's not to say that they're deprioritizing, the sterile processing departments or this product. Also, there are other accommodations that are happening. So again, in those social media groups, you'll see that one institution will have no problem with supply, and other institutions can get a single piece of wrap on there into their hands. And so I almost hesitate to focus on a full-on shortage and look at it more as a redistribution of materials, because again, these relationships, these contracts, they play a big role in how materials get to people. And if you're at a massive GPO that can, let's say, stockpile or make large commitments, pay upfront perhaps, then you may get allocation of a material where a smaller facility does not get that allocation or cannot make that commitment. I've been on other calls and heard that some hospitals, especially smaller hospitals, are coming together or even purchasing warehousing facilities because they want to have more control over product. They're trying to source products on their own in some cases because they're so off put by what has gone on in the past year with the availability of products. And so when it comes to the shortage and how we can kind of create something out of thin air, again, it comes from making that deliberate decision to focus or not focus on something, investing the time, money, and energy into that thing. And then also being realistic in the distribution of it. Like I said, we're not, it would be totally irrational for me to come and say, okay, I can fulfill every empty order that is there, because there still are limitations on distribution and supply. But what we can do is have this product available, make it available in a way that is impactful to people who cannot otherwise get it, and start the process of sampling. So that's something that's really important to us too, to demonstrate that this product is in sort of 1-to-1 proportion for what you have now, to learn if it's not, to have the humility to say, okay, what additional testing do we need to do to make sure this meets the expectations of our customers? We are introducing this new product, and of course we've done massive research to begin with, but there's always choices that you make of where to stop and start when you're introducing a new product. And there's differences in flexibility of what a customer needs given the situation. So we had tons of people purchasing cellulose-based wrap where they were having to use these 2 sheets because it was all they could get, right? And I really wish it was because they could see all the benefits of cellulose-based wrap that I'm aware of and you all are probably aware of. But the truth is, it was because it was what they needed. So we're trying to meet in the middle where this is a stellar product. This is going to meet your expectations. Hopefully it's going to exceed your expectations. But we're also at that beginning place where if we find out that a certain piece of this needs additional testing, we can adapt and do that too.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay. Jamie, what makes the Proper Wrap product and a partnership with Proper different than what's currently on the market? Is there anything additional that you would want to add?
I mean, as a representative of Proper, and I think our customers would agree, as a smaller company, but a company that's been here for, it's scary to think that we're almost at 100 years, open in the 1930s, we're family owned. The biggest thing that I can sort of promise to you if you do consider working with Proper is that you will get an answer to your phone call, to your email, and it may literally be from me. We're a smaller team, right? My VP title doesn't mean that you're going to talk to one of 30 other people who have the same information. We are very deliberate and very collaborative and make ourselves readily available. So I would invite anyone on this call, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there probably too often. I'm definitely active in a lot of the social groups. And again, that customer service email that we can sort of run across the screen, that's going to get you an answer from a person, from a limited number of people, which, yes, maybe that's scary to think that there's not a massive team awaiting your call. But what I've heard from our customers and end users is that knowing that they can speak to one of a few people, one of an appropriate number of people. I don't want to commit to the exact number because over time these things change. And knowing that if you have a question, you can get to the source. If you want to talk to my CTO, I can make that happen for you. And that's just not available at other companies just due to the size of the space. So that's the biggest thing that I would love for people to understand about working with Proper Manufacturing Company. In terms of the products, I think it goes back to that reality that most of these disposable products are heavily regulated. And so we never put anything out into the space that isn't meeting those standards and expectations at a minimum, right? Most of the time we try to exceed those standards and expectations. And so that's the first thing to understand. And then ask us the tough questions. Ask us the stuff that Dee talked about. What are the nitty gritty? What are the things that your preferences or your I'm used to's, right? I'm used to my product doing this. Does your product do that? And let us help to support you and give you that honest answer of when the product is the same, or maybe we have some room for growth.
A case in point, one of the individuals tuned in, David, said it just reached out to by email to the Proper headquarters during this webinar and received a prompt response. Exceptional customer service. So you're not blowing smoke. So I appreciate it.
That's amazing. No, we really.
David, thanks for putting her to the test.
Yeah, thank you for testing my team. I'm glad that they fulfilled the expectation. And I have to say that because we are a smaller company, everyone is very busy doing their own jobs. So it's not like I told them, oh, I'm going to be on this call, keep an eye out.
That's awesome. Dee, I would love to get your perspective. When you sit here as a sterile processing leader, you have a hugely important job to do, and you've been navigating this situation for a long time. When you hear this account of what it's like to work with different size manufacturers, what's going on in your head?
A lot of what's going on in my head is I'm very thankful that I have somebody else that does the contracts. Because if I had to add that into what I do all the time, then I would probably lose my mind. But I appreciate the fact that if I were to call and I'm going to get a response, that is wonderful. I know that one of the big things for me as a manager is to make sure that my staff can feel comfortable engaging reps from other companies. And I want them and I want to support them in their efforts to, hey, what's the latest, greatest, what's out there? And bringing that forward so that I can then bring that forward to, my leadership team to see, hey, is this something that we need to do? Is this going to improve our quality of care for our patients? So it's really important to have that staff engagement with any of this, and making sure that they feel comfortable engaging you as a leader and engaging outside vendors or ideas, or engaging in LinkedIn conversations or in Facebook conversations, and really finding out what else is out there, because many people, I'm weird. I grew up in Iowa, and I worked at a couple of different hospitals there, and I mean, the experiences were night and day difference where I came from. And then I did education, and then all of a sudden I came to Oregon. So, and my job's changed 3 times since I've been here, but hey, it's all good. Right. So, the thing is that what will get where you will get the most bang for your buck out of any product is when you have the engagement of your staff, and they are reaching out to these different manufacturers saying, hey, can you tell me more about this particular product? Or I am having issues with this. Can you help me out? That as a manager in this environment, that's probably the best piece of advice that I can give anybody else, is to make sure that you are opening up to allowing your staff that ability to figure these things out, see what else is out there.
Nice. Thank you for that. I love that. I love it. It seems to me that you place a lot of trust in your staff, which is incredible, because that they're the ones on the front lines doing the hard work day in and day out, and they have the best way to learn that firsthand information about what needs to happen, what needs to change, what's working and what's not. So I love hearing the trust in your voice and the trust in your words for your staff. They're very lucky to have you as their leader. I know that much for sure. Jamie, I want to turn this back over to you and just talk really quickly. I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to talk really quickly. Why would you think it's a good idea for a department leader like Dee to review current packing methods spend in comparison to this new Proper offering? And then if you can kind of dovetail that into the offering itself and more details about the product, any timelines that you want to share, things like that, that would be great.
Sure. So I would start by saying that every department leader really should have the attitude that Tia is talking about, where even their technicians, the folks that don't necessarily have that decision-making power, are able to and heard if they look at new products. And frankly, this is something that should happen across the board. Look at Proper products, of course, but look at every company that's out there, big, small, medium, etc. Look at even the products that are supplied by the distributors, which are going to be private label products, right? They're not manufacturers, but they're getting you access to new products. And understand your options, because if we've learned nothing else in the past year, things can change very, very, very quickly, very dramatically, and it can be terrifying. So just in the same way that we kind of have a general feel, okay, if they're sold out of whatever, my Oreos, I know there's a secondary brand on the shelf. I would say it's the responsibility of departments to at least have an idea what else is out there. And that doesn't mean committing to anyone else or buying anything from anyone else. If you write to us, we'll make sure you get samples of products. And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. And we could probably have a whole other conversation about this, but having a formal testing procedure in place for new products is so, so important. So a lot of the time, you introduce a new product to a department and it's just like, okay, see if this works the same as our other product. And there's no formal process, which means that your biases are going to come through 100%, but it also makes it very hard to have that conversation with your supplier to say, okay, this is my problem. How do I solve this problem? Or can you solve this problem for me? So I would like to start just by saying knowing what's out there is going to save you a headache when inevitably something pops up. So that's the first reason why I would say you should be requesting a sample of our product right now. The second piece of it is that contracts do change. And unfortunately, the state of things right now is that many technicians and end users are not involved in those decisions. So being aware of your market can help you hedge that sudden, well, okay, my product has poofed, but at least I've heard of Prober before. At least I know that Healthmark has this other thing, right? At least I'm aware that this is happening in the world around me and being an active player. In terms of the product, what I'm really excited about is that the product is officially available. Again, we are trying to be as deliberate as possible, but we would absolutely be welcoming any phone calls, any questions about pricing. Unfortunately, I don't have that information because it is very variable, depending on commitments and things like that, and also contracts. So some hospitals just won't allow us to roll up and drop off our wrap right now, right? We have to go through the contracting process that we discussed. Best thing to do, go to our website, which is scrolling across the screen right now, and look up Sterile Unite. Contact our customer service people if that's too much to remember. If you just search Unite on our website, like bringing two sheets together to unite them, you'll be able to find it and request more information. We can give you flyers, we can give you technical data to start this conversation. And remember that it is a conversation. Just because we tell you this is the information that we have, please ask us for more. Ask us the things that we didn't know you needed to know, or that maybe we forgot, right? Like, we're all in this together to make sure patients stay safe. And so there's no room for shyness or being offended by any question. Ask the questions because the goal is patient safety and avoiding rewrapping all of your wrap because you didn't know the weight limit like Dee experienced early on in the pandemic, because that is going to give you a terrible memory of Proper Manufacturing Company and probably of your job overall.
Right, Jamie, thank you so much. For everyone still tuned in, and for those of you who watch this discussion on demand, Sterile Unite is currently available at propermanufacturing.com. Visit the website to learn more. Contact the customer service email, customerservice@propermfg.com, with any questions. We have a testimonial in the comment thread that said, nope, they're the real deal. It was a wrap question and it was answered immediately. So Jamie, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your intentionality with this new product. It's obviously a very sensitive subject for the industry, and I appreciate you being willing to give an honest assessment of the challenges and the opportunities that exist for the industry as a whole. Dee, you are such a gem. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dee.
This was awesome.
Good. If anyone has questions, you can certainly visit the website Proper MFG, and that's Proper with two P's, actually three, PROPPER, MFG.com for more information. Jamie Taryn, Dee Kilby, thank you for an enlightening conversation. And for everyone tuned in and for the entire sterile processing universe, keep fighting dirty. We'll see you all for another panel discussion next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.